Hi. As one of the first social media MPs, SNNP, for I feel it's the only way I can have my voice heard as being part of the silent majority, I feel. Um, I just am really very upset and concerned about this new agreement we may have with about Turkey and the 2 billion being offered to help them resolve the issue with the refugees coming across. But this is in conjunction with giving them visas, freer access to visas for coming across into Europe and access to the Schengen area, which is also the free movement into Europe. And surely this will make it worse, not better, because it will give access to all of the Turkish people and all of the refugees in Turkey. Plus it will be easier for those who provide false IDs for the refugees to provide those to Turkey, and then they just come across the Turkish border. So I can't understand the logic of that. It's just going to make it worse. Obviously, maybe there's something the politicians know that I don't, but I don't altogether trust the politicians, some of them anyway, because even Jack Straw, after he had let many thousands in of the Eastern European bloc early, 10 years later said, maybe perhaps it might have been a mistake. And I could have told him that when he first announced that they were going to do that. And the Labour didn't put any restrictions on the immigrants coming in. And they keep calling for the fact, or saying that the Tories are now not able to fulfill their quotas for reducing the numbers of immigrants, and that not being able to reduce the deficit, and yet it is they, the Labour, that actually cause the deficit and actually cause the greater immigrants coming in during their period. So I find that very demoralising to hear from them, and I'm tired of hearing it. And also I'm tired of hearing how terrible the Tories are about the way they're dealing with the matter, when in fact the Labour didn't deal with the matter themselves, and they don't even provide solutions to the issues. Instead of coming together trying to provide solutions, they just vilify the Tories. Now, I'm a floating voter, and I'm not particularly one party or the other. I just want the UK to be able to maintain its stability and its economic status, and to assist where we can. But I don't think we can keep assisting where it's likely to drown us altogether, because that's not sensible. We won't be helping those that we have here already, and we certainly won't be able to help those that are coming. So I ask again that we come together with Russia and President Assad to fight against IS as a joint international community, as President Putin has suggested that we come together, as we did at the end of the World War II, to have a coalition of international countries, even better than the World War II, obviously, because that wasn't a great solution. But we have to remember that, again, as I've said before, President Saddam Hussein, was removed, and there was great disorder there following that. And if we do the same with President Assad, as many have also said in the political arena, that we'll probably have the same issue in Syria, it won't resolve it. So the next best thing is for us to do the opposite to what we did with Saddam Hussein, and support President Assad, who has provided and said on several occasions, even recently, that he would allow elections. So I think the sensible thing is that we very quickly begin to support both Russia and President Assad, and provide an aid package, maybe this 2 billion, if it's going to be spent, to as a beginnings of an aid package to start rebuilding Syria, and that we all help fight off IS, and then in maybe 2 to 5 years elections are allowed in Syria, which President Assad has indicated that he will allow. So I think we need to discuss that. And if Mr. Cameron feels that he said too much against President Assad, then, although I am a great supporter of Mr. Cameron, because I do feel he's trying to do the right thing for the UK, and is probably the truest patriot here for England and also for the refugees. And people are vilifying the fact that England has poured an incredible amount of money into the refugee camps around Syria, which again is the most sensible idea. But this is, as well as doing this, we're now being told we have to take in all the refugees as well, so we'll have double cost. We can't do everything. We're a small country, and Europe cannot take everybody in, because we're talking about refugees from Eritrea and Syria and Iraq. There has to be a limit. Please be sensible. And even those celebrities and politicians that are saying, we must take more, they don't, I'm sure, and won't provide all their excess property and land and finance to support these refugees that they are so willingly wanting to bring in, without any sense or common sense of how we're going to pay it when we're in austerity measures. Even as I think it's a foolishness to spend when instead of trying to get on top of the deficit that we have, when Labour have already done that over the years, and it's emptied the coffers of England. So, and all the young that are supporting Mr. Corbyn are actually not perhaps aware of what's happened over the years. And I think they act in ignorance and just based on rhetoric. And it's very easy to talk without stir up people to a lot of applause and this sort of thing. But the actual facts won't bring the result we want. You have to balance the books, otherwise we will end up like Greece. And I don't understand why people won't see this. And as regards to the talent that we need, if we might get from refugees and immigrants, we have 60 million people here as it is. Surely there's enough talent we can glean from that. Surely enough staff we can glean from that for the NHS or similar. And the problem is that we haven't got the schooling, because there are so many different languages now, and due to the deficit, the money is not being poured into it, and also the nurses and doctors are having a very hard time because they're having to work long hours, and we can't get the staff for that. But if we use that money, that 2 billion or whatever money we can get, by not taking more refugees, that we resolve that by improving their work environment and training, and have more staff so that it's not so stressful. Because having been a nurse myself, it is very stressful. I can see that. We're actually bringing in people that don't fully understand the language and mishear what we say. It even occurred to me when I was in intensive care. A young woman who had just started misheard what I said, and I was in an urgent state, and she, it was very difficult. It's not all great sailing when we have people that cannot speak the language properly, even in somewhere like intensive care. And the other thing we could possibly do temporarily while we're trying to sort out Syria, which I think must be done soon, in this next month. Otherwise, if we leave it for another 3 months or to the spring, by this time next year, I think we're going to have a lot of problems in Europe as well. And I would suggest maybe if Italy and Greece want it, and any other of the poorer nations, maybe, well, I'm not saying Italy and Greece are poorer necessarily, but we're all having difficulties at the moment, but maybe them, as they're receiving the bulk of the refugees at the moment, and they might welcome greater funds coming into their country to deal with that in response if they take that, then they keep the refugees there, but the refugees are given just a refugee type pass card, which they can stay for maybe 2 or 5 or maybe 10 years, and then and they're only allowed to reside in that country that has received funds in relation to the amount of refugees or immigrants that they've allowed to remain there. For some country like Romania, for instance, that has a lot of land space compared to England, for instance, or Sweden, then the money would be a means of rebuilding and assisting their country to regenerate it, and the refugees could go there and start a life there, or temporarily, while the issue of Syria is resolved, and perhaps in the process of time, within the 5 to 10 years, then they will be able to go back. So we could do that. I think the ideal of free movement in Europe has to be relaxed. It has to be changed, because it's an ideal, even as the communism was an ideal and hasn't worked, even as the European is an ideal, and we have to adjust to it as at times we find that it doesn't work, as with the euro in Greece, and as with now this Schengen agreement, or the Schengen area and the free movement. It's not going to work because of this issue that we now have with the refugees. And we also have to change the standing of the word refugee, because again people are abusing it and using it to gain access to countries that are wealthier and doing better. But the thing is, if we take in everybody, and everybody will want to come because everybody wants a better life, but the thing is, we're all struggling at the moment, all of us, even Europe. We've had this great financial crash, and we're supposed to be on austerity measures, and we haven't got money growing on trees as it doesn't elsewhere, and we have to realign our thought processes and the way we believe, and also with the way we believe in God, because we have to realize that, as I put in my book, acertainmyth.com, that the Muslims and Jews and Christians, to an extent, we're all believing in a part message, an incomplete message, either because we're only reading one book, the Bible or the Quran, or we're not reading all of the book, or both books, or all of the book that we do believe in, be it the Bible or Quran. So then we just rely on certain verses without the balance of the other verses. For instance, the Quran says it's okay to kill God. It's okay to kill for God, and that it's not, and that we should not befriend Jews and Christians. This is in Surah 551. So how can they integrate, or how will they integrate, if they're looking at words in their book, believing it's from God, and they are being told not to integrate with Jews and Christians? So the integration will fail before we even begin. So as I say, but then if we go on, the world, the whole world needs to know, and the Jews, Muslims and Christians need to know, that in Surah 4136 it also says, believe the scriptures from aforetime, which means the Bible, which means the Gospels, which are in the Bible, and which the Jewish scriptures are also in the Bible, in the Old Testament, the New Testament being the Gospels by Christ and his followers. And also in Surah 350 it says there that we should obey Jesus, which again we need to read the scriptures from aforetime, which is the Gospels, which are the words of Jesus, and that we should also make no distinction between the prophets. This is Surah 4, 150 to 152. In other words, we shouldn't make any other prophet greater than another, meaning that the prophet of the Quran is no greater than Jesus or any of the other prophets. So we shouldn't just be following the prophet of the Quran, and again, which means that we should read both the Bible and the Quran. And it also is in Surah 256 that there is no compulsion in religion. This means that we shouldn't force people to convert to Muslim or Christian or Jew. Now, obviously IS has taken that as really breaching that very plain verse, because they're killing people if they don't convert. Now, if you believe in a religion and in the book, you have to abide by the book. Now, and they're saying that both the Jews and both the Christians, and the Jews, I expect the Jews, the Christians and the Muslims are saying that their book is the perfect word of God. Now, there are imperfections in both books. They don't disagree with each other, and there are also contradictions within each book. So we cannot be killing each other or killing others thinking that we're going to paradise when we haven't read all of the books and both books, as both the Quran, certainly the Quran says that we should. Although some leaders of the Muslim community say there is a Quran, there is a Torah that has not been changed, there is no such Torah. So we need to read the Torah and these other scriptures that we have now, because they may not be perfect, but neither is the Quran perfect. And there is a message there. I personally have experienced the power of God myself, and I promise you, you won't go to paradise by killing someone, because I know both books, and I'm sure that you don't. And I say it for your own benefit, because you will be dying probably permanently through lack of knowledge of these books. You must read these books yourself, or read acertainmyth.com, because it's called A Certain Myth, or Is It True? So I'm saying ultimately that I do believe there is a God, haven't experienced his power, and that it is true, but you must know the message, the full message. So please, whether you Jew, Christian or Muslim or unbeliever, please read acertainmyth.com, and also go on to acertainbattle.com, and there's a blog there as well, and YouTube messages there, which are not perfect, I know, and neither is the book, and neither is the website. But if you read it, you'll get the general idea of the message that I'm trying to provide to you, because this is how we will resolve the issue of terrorism and of the Syrian war. So please take time to read it. It will only take 1 to 3 hours. A Certain Myth, A Certain Battle a little longer. There's portions of the Quran and the Bible on there, so that you don't have to go out and buy a Bible. And I just ask that you take time for the sake of the world and the refugees. Thank you.